Morning, everybody. It's comicKkrakK. It feels like we haven't seen each other like this for a long time, so I thought I'd do a video. I have a couple of things I wanted to talk about today. Some of it comic book related, others just kind of things that have been on my mind, different things I've been up to this week. It's been a little bit of a busier week. Special Sexy Lady Friend has been working, and I've been staying at home with Lillian for the most part. My stepfather is staying with us for a visit, so we've had a bit of company and just a little bit of other kinds of events going on. The first thing I wanted to talk about today was today in Manitoba. Let's try that again. So, morning everybody. It's comicKkrakK, and I'm here face to face. It feels like we haven't seen each other like this for a while. Just had a few things on my mind recently. There's a little bit of comic talk, but I guess it'll be more of a blog. I don't know, a vlog or whatever you want to call it. And I think the first thing on my mind has been on my mind for the past couple of weeks. Today marks the 100-year anniversary of women in Manitoba winning the right to vote. And there's a few things about that I think are important to, I don't know, that have just been running through my head and things I wanted to just discuss. And thought I would just share it with you because I don't know. It's not the same example, but for example, Mercy had a video the other day where she goes with her family and travels to the comic shop, and you get to see some of her surroundings. Other people in the community have filmed kind of their city or their comic shops. I really like that kind of thing. I really like that kind of connection to each other's environments and where we've grown up and that sort of idea. So this is kind of a little more on the history of Manitoba, where I live. So we're in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Winnipeg is kind of the center of Canada as far as geographically. We're in the prairies. I talked to D. Blake Wirtz at one point, and he had asked, like a lot of people do, and I don't take offense to it by any stretch, where are you in relation to Toronto? And that's something that people always want to know, like how far are you from Toronto or how far are you from Vancouver? So if I was to drive from Winnipeg to Toronto nonstop, it would take me approximately 24 to 26 hours to make that drive. Now, that doesn't mean to say that in between Winnipeg and Toronto there's nothing. I mean, there's some cities and there's some towns and all sorts of stuff all the way through there. But that's kind of to give you an idea of how far we are away from Toronto. I have done the drive a number of times, actually, both when we moved to Ontario and also on tours and things like that. So this is kind of in that context of, here's a little story about Manitoba. So 100 years ago today, women won the right to vote. We were the first province to give women the right to vote. And I'm using that word specifically, give, because it's loaded, right? Like I know that the word is loaded. So not only were we the first, we were, I think, about a year ahead of anybody else. I believe it was Saskatchewan next, it's the province to our west is the province right beside us. And I think places like Quebec, they didn't get the right to vote until 1940 because it was a very different political climate in Quebec. And on the grand scope of things, Aboriginals didn't get the right to vote until 1960. Now, in 1916, during the war, there was Aboriginals that had signed up to fight there was a number of them that had signed up to fight before it was passed by the federal government that they didn't want Aboriginals signing up to fight alongside us, because they were still very much at that time. Are you okay? Do you need help? Yeah, it's a microphone. You can come and say hello. She has new shoes, so I just have to help her with her putting on her new shoe. Do you want to show them your shoes? Ooh, pretty shoes, hey? Okay? There you go. Thank you. At that time, Aboriginals were still thought of as very savage and unruly, that they would bring things like scalping into the war and things that were considered uncivilized, military speaking, combat speaking, which is obviously, it's ridiculous. There's going to be a lot of things in this that are completely ridiculous. Let's just agree between you and me that I understand that things are ridiculous, just so I don't have to feel like I have to say it every single time. So in a roundabout way, this whole thing has been kind of sitting in my mind, and there's a couple of things about it that are mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing that my grandmother is still alive. She lives in England, and she's 95 years old. So she's been alive for 95 years. This right to vote came into effect just 100 years ago, just 5 years outside the window of her being born. It's mind-blowing to me because that's such a small amount of time. On the grand scheme of things, 100 years is nothing. It's absolutely nothing, and it makes me realize a lot of things. And one thing that makes me realize is how much in our infancy we are as a society. I'm now speaking of Canada, Manitoba, and things that I see around me and experience myself. Just how childish and how childlike we still are, that we still have so much more room to grow. And it puts a lot of things in perspective, like the issues that we're still having with how we're dealing with Aboriginal people and how we're coming to terms with that is another thing that's still in its infancy. It doesn't excuse the behavior by any stretch, but it does put things into perspective that there's a long haul to go yet as far as things still needing to change. It's only been 100 years. Yes, women won the right to vote 100 years ago provincially. They didn't win federally till I think 1918. I think. I don't. I'm not 100% sure on that. The Aboriginals that signed up for the war, the ones that signed up were allowed to vote, but they had to give up their Indian status, and being a status Indian, a card-carrying Indian, which is what it was called, that's why I'm using the term, gave you many benefits, both when it came to taxation, and where you're living, and just for general life. It just gave you, there was benefits to being a status Indian, a card-carrying Indian. So if you served in the war and you wanted the right to vote, you had to give up that status. So obviously that had a lot of repercussions all throughout the community, because it was the men that were going to fight, and that right to vote extended to your family, whether you served or not. So now your wife and your children and relatives lost their status as well, your immediate family. But it gave these Aboriginal men, there's a lot of them that won awards. There's a bunch of books that have been written too, I found out. There's a couple that I have on a list that I'd really love to read, just about their time serving in the military. They won awards, and it just gave them, from the little bit that I've read, it seems to have given them a sense of contributing, and a sense of self, and a sense of worth, that they're doing something to better their environment as well too. And I can't get past the fact that it's only 100 years ago. So the thing that gets a lot of attention is over in the UK with women suffragists, I believe was the term. And on CBC the other day, they played a little clip with an elderly woman who was one of the suffragists in the UK. And this clip was from 1975. And talking about what they went through. She was kind of in charge of the... I'm trying to think of the right word. The militant wing, I guess. She was in charge of things like getting women to put bombs in mailboxes, cause civil disobedience. She was arrested finally for smashing some windows and spent some time in jail. It was supposed to be, I think, 21 days or 22 days. They had to let her out early, almost immediately, because she went on a hunger strike. So a lot of that kind of area gets quite a bit of coverage, and there's a lot written about it because it's this kind of more in-your-face, glamorous type of ideal, whereas the women in Canada, it was very provincially segregated because each kind of area had their own needs and their own kind of environment. As far as the prairies went, there was obviously a lot of farming going on. So what they wanted out of things were a lot different than people on the coast, for example, on the coasts. So the federal government, instead of making a ruling across Canada, they left it up to each province to come to a decision themselves. What else did I want to say on that topic? I think I've pretty much said it all as far as, again, there's just a lot of thoughts about that and just how close in time all that is. Again, I mean, 100 years is not a long time. We've seen a lot of advancements in 100 years, and it's one of the things that boggles my mind about my grandmother, who's still alive. In her 95 years of life, what has she experienced? She's experienced so much, and if all those changes have happened in 100 years, what's going to happen within our lifetime, and those sort of questions, and mind-boggling that it took till 1960 for Aboriginals to get the right to vote. I don't know, and it's still a bit of a hot topic in Winnipeg. I'm sure it is across Canada, but I only know my experience in Winnipeg, even in our household, as far as when my parents come to visit. It's a topic that we don't talk about. Because it just ends up making me angry, their viewpoints on Aboriginal people in Winnipeg. And while I can see how they may feel certain ways and feel certain things, it's completely uncalled for, and we had a big blowout about it, and ended up having a talk with Mr. Tom about it, how racism is not acceptable no matter who are the people, no matter if they're family members, no matter if they're friends. It's unacceptable, flat out. There's no excuse for it. It's just 100% unacceptable. So it was good that it opened that dialogue with Mr. Tom. He seemed very interested in it. But, so I mean, that kind of topic just sits with you, you know, that this is something that's new, and that there's a lot of work to be done, and hopefully things can kind of keep taking strides forward. So there you go. Off of that heavy note, I just really wanted to talk about it because I think it's an important date. It's an important thing to think about, and if you're interested, I would highly recommend going online. I'll try to find the link that I read where it had some kind of talk about some books as far as Aboriginal people's place in the war. But I urge you to do some research on your own, see for my fellow Canadians, see what it was like for your province, check the dates, and just give it some thought in general today. Just think about how important a time like that is and what that says for the rest of us. So on to a couple of lighter notes. Okay, so from women's right to vote to a man's man, Samuel Fuller. This is his book, A Third Face, and it's written by him a couple of years before his death, and just it's him telling stories about his life from childhood to his first jobs as a copy boy at a newspaper, working up to become a crime reporter, etc. Time spent in the war, and then time spent making movies. It's a fantastic read so far. I'm kind of 60 pages into it already. Found it on Amazon. I'll probably end up picking up a copy for myself. I've got this taken out from the library for another week or so, and I don't know if I'll have a chance to make it through the whole thing or not. It's one that I would love to have anyway, just to kind of go back to. I've always known about Sam Fuller, and I've seen a couple of his films in the past, like Shot Corridor, Naked Kiss, Steel Helmet I'd seen in the past. And I don't know what sparked it this time. There was something that sparked an interest. I think it was actually just thinking about his documentary. There's a great documentary on YouTube. It's called The Typewriter, The Rifle, and the Movie Camera, I believe is the full title. I'll make sure I put a link in the description box to that video. It's well worth checking out. If you're a fan of films, if you're a fan of just listen to old guys talk, it's a great movie. It's 55 minutes long. Tim Robbins does most of the interviews with Fuller, but Jim Jarmusch makes appearances, Quentin Tarantino makes appearances, Martin Scorsese makes appearances, and then of course they talk about his movies and they show clips from his movies and his time spent in the war, in World War II. Just kind of about his life, and it really gives you a good basis. It gives you a nice overview of everything that he's done. Plus, most importantly, it introduces you to the personality that was Sam Fuller. The way he talks, the tone of his voice, the things that he has to say, his kind of no-nonsense attitude is really... I mean, you just fall in love with the guy. The guy seemed like an incredible human being. There's a story for The Big Red One, which came out in 1980. Mark Hamill had now become Mark Hamill. Star Wars had been out. He was now Mark Hamill. He had been asked to do The Big Red One. He wanted to pass on it. He knew who Sam Fuller was, and out of respect, he wanted to go down to his office to tell him face to face and say, listen, I'm not really, this isn't really for me. I'm going to say no. In the little clip of an interview that I watched with Mark Hamill on the topic, he said that when he got to his office, he sat down with this guy, and Sam just charmed the pants off him. He said he was really funny, really smart, really passionate, really just likable and lovable as a human being. They got into this conversation, and he found it impossible to say no. So we ended up doing the movie, and it's out of the chunk. I've been rewatching films and then renting other ones that I haven't seen. Fortunately, our library has a really strong collection of DVDs, especially when it comes to Criterion releases and certain directors, and Sam Fuller is one of them that they've got a shit ton of his movies. So I've had a chance to watch a whole bunch of them, which has been really entertaining, and I find it helps, especially when you're really digging into a director's work, to just kind of watch everything you can get your hands on. My point, just that, you know, there's something about his attitude. There's something about that no nonsense. I'm gonna make a deal based on a handshake, looking a man in the eye, shaking his hand, and you're good as your word. I don't know. Maybe it's partially due to my jaded nature when it comes to the job that I'm in, when it comes to the film business here in Winnipeg. He says some of this. There's some great quotes in here. I've been putting them up on Twitter, the couple that I've seen, and it's such a unique industry and a unique job, and I've never quite had any job like this, and it definitely gets you jaded. So it's great to hear kind of no nonsense attitude and talk and straight talk about stuff, and it's I hate to say this, and I mean it, but I don't mean it. It seems like it's kind of a male figure that doesn't exactly exist anymore, especially when you hear him talk about his life, especially when you hear him talk about his time in the war and what that was like, and just what the world was like when he was growing up. Again, it's one of those things. This isn't, we're not talking 500 years ago. We're just talking like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way up to the early 80s when he was making movies. It's not a lifetime ago. There's something refreshing about listening to a guy like this talk. His mannerisms, the whole 9 yards. It's also very entertaining, and his movies really are incredible. A couple of highlights, like I said, have been the Big Red one, Underworld USA. One that he wrote the script for was based on one of his books called Scandal Sheet that I just watched last night. It was incredible. I really loved that movie. The filmmaking in that movie was beautiful as well too. Those are kind of the three that pop into my head as being impressive to me. That doesn't mean that those are the only ones. Steel Helmet was great as well for like a war picture and things. Naked Kiss is a phenomenal movie. He's a guy worth looking into if you're a fan of movies. His war movies really stand apart. His realism is still it's still a filmmaking realism, especially in the Big Red one. It really has a European film feel to me. It's not worried so much about being set and tone and violence and sets being precise. It's more about what the characters are saying that's real. It's more about what their experiences are like or were like that are the real part of it. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about him other than, man, I love Sam Fuller. His characters, it's a lot of noir stuff, and especially at the time that he was working, stuff like Pickup on South Street. The character in there at one point he's willing to do business with anybody, be you a communist, be you whatever, rich, poor, doesn't matter. He doesn't care. He talks about this whole underworld of being very, they're okay by you, you have to be okay by them. He's good friends with this woman whose job is being a snitch, and she snitches on him, and he doesn't falter for it. He's just says, that's who she is. How can I falter? How much did she get? $50? Yeah, that sounds like Mo, you know what I mean? But some of the things that he injected into his movies at the time kind of ruffled people's feathers. And it's kind of hard to imagine it now, which is great when you have all these interviews and commentary tracks and write-ups that kind of put things into context for you a little bit. Yeah, they're not nice guys, but they're all, at the end of the day, they all are nice guys. You know what I mean? They're just guys. They're just people trying to get by. I'll just leave you with this quote. Jim Jarmusch gets a kick out of it, but Fuller says, I was serious about it, and Jarmusch said that one time, Sam said this to me, if a story doesn't give you a hard-on in the first couple of scenes, throw it in the goddamn garbage. As corny as it sounds, I love all those young filmmakers like a benevolent papa and wish them continued success. And he's talking about guys like Martin Scorsese, Peter Bogdanovich, Tim Robbins, Quentin Tarantino, Wim Wenders, guys that he was friends with. Truer words were never spoken. And the intro of his movies usually do pack a bit of a punch. You really get a good sense of what it is you're going to watch. So, yeah, Sam Fuller. Next up, I just wanted to have a couple of words about was the 25th year of the Winnipeg New Music Festival. I went last night, I'm going tonight, and I'm going on Friday night to see some performances. Last night it was at the concert hall with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra performing some pieces. One of the pieces they performed was from a guy who I'm a fan of. Let me find the page for you here. A guy by the name of Phil Niblock. There we go, there's the ticket, and there was the performance. In kind of support of the festival, they have these programs that cost $5, so I decided to pick myself up one. So last night I heard a new piece, first time performed in North America, by Phil Niblock, who's kind of a minimalist composer. Lots of repetition, lots of use of using this repetition. It creates subtones and rhythms, and when you shift a lot of this repetition, even minimally, the difference in sound texture that you can get. This was the first piece that he's written. Apparently, what they said last night, he wasn't here last night. Apparently he had surgery the day before and couldn't make it to town, which is really too bad. I would love to have heard him talk about it a bit more. Previous stuff that he's written have always been accompanied by pre-recorded material to help thicken out the sound. This particular piece was written just for a small orchestra with no other tapes playing, and it's really, everybody starts in B, I believe, and they just kind of keep moving in quarter tones lower and lower at certain periods of time. And it's a really nice effect that it had. I thought it was too quiet, but this is how I'm assuming this is how he wanted it. I don't know how much time he actually spent with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra to prepare them for the piece, or if he just sent instructions and then they kind of worked on it themselves. It was a lot of work for them regardless. It's about a 12 to 15 minute piece, I believe is what they said. And it was impressive. It didn't blow me away like I thought it would, but it was pretty great. And then we had a couple of pretentious performances that really just drove me fucking ballistic. And then the final piece that we heard by this Lyra Auerbach from US, called Icarus. I read in my program guide the write-up on that and thought, holy crap, that is going to be a pretentious piece of shit too. Turned out to be the best piece in the evening, actually. I really, really, really responded to it. I really liked it a hell of a lot. And she's somebody that I'm going to look into a little bit more. It was so impressive, her use of the orchestra and just different feels, and I don't know, just the way she worked it was really impressive. And I guess the biggest thing about her piece was that she wrote the piece of music and then had these ideas about it afterwards, whereas these other pretentious fucks, they had a big idea of what it was going to be. And I'm going to represent, when I was up north and I talked to the Inuits and I heard their throat singing, I was inspired to write a piece melding science and mysticism, and go fuck yourself. It was really just a load of crap. So Phil Niblock, fairly impressive. Lyra Auerbach, really impressive. The second half was with Michael Snow, and it was a piece of video, Snow in Vienna, with him doing two pieces solo on the piano. And then there was an interview with him afterwards. Michael Snow and a guy named Robert Enright had a conversation. Michael Snow is in his 80s. He lived in Toronto for many years. He's Canadian, and he was known for his experimental films, one that utilized a slow zoom. He also, when he moved to New York, he rubbed shoulders with a lot of huge names. I didn't actually realize how many. I knew some of the names that he had kind of been a part of, like this whole Lamont Young, Philip Glass, Terry Riley, possibly, that kind of group of people. But I didn't know that he also had guys like Archie Shepp play at his spot. He was friends with Albert Eiler, Don Cherry, guys of that caliber who I absolutely love. Albert Eiler is one of my favorite jazz players of all time. So that was very cool. And he mentioned a film too, I'm blanking on the name now, that he got a band together for the actual film. and Albert Eiler and Don Cherry were two of the musicians in it. So I'd really like to hunt that down. So that was a good night. And then tonight, I'm going to see a guy named Stephen O'Malley. Stephen O'Malley kind of started his career in kind of heavy metal type scene. He was in a band, Thor's Hammer. He started a band called Conate. He was in a band called Burning Witch. The general emphasis in his music is the drone, utilizing drone and how you can play with sub-frequencies. Conate was a particularly impressive band because of how low they tuned. They custom-made guitars with aluminum necks because they were warping. Regular guitar necks were warping, and they had to have something sturdy enough to hold the specific tension on the strings. They also had issues when they would record. They had to come up with new ways to record their music because they were so low, they were tuned so low, it was messing up the recording gear, so they had to actually insulate the recording gear that when they would play in these environments, in these big rooms or whatever, to get a nice resonant sound. They had to come up with alternate ways to record the music. He then founded a band called Sun, and they took heavy influence from another band called Earth, who were well known, especially the album 2 from Earth was really drone heavy. They kind of came out of the Seattle grunge scene. Earth is notorious because Dylan Carlson is the one that supposedly sold Kurt Cobain the gun that he shot his head off with. And Dylan Carlson has always been a bit of a sketchy figure within that scene, but he did make some incredible music, and even some of the new Earth stuff that still comes out is pretty impressive. So Stephen O'Malley tonight is going to be doing a solo performance, utilizing feedback and droning guitars and stuff like that, which I'm really looking forward to. I've seen him live once before, and it was as part of a bigger festival, and it was a much bigger space. And when he changed the frequencies, as it got lower and higher and fluctuated, you could feel each vibration hit you in the body in a different spot. You could feel it moving from your head down to your toes. It was really impressive. I'm seeing him in a smaller venue tonight, so I'm looking forward to it. And then he has written a piece for Symphony as well, which they're going to perform on Friday. And I'm looking forward to that as well. The little write-up in here sounds interesting. We'll see. He's not as pretentious a writer as some of these other people. And he's also giving a talk on Friday night at 6 p.m. or 6:15. He's going to do a talk on sound and mysticism and that sort of thing. And then after his piece is performed, there's going to be a question and answer period with him. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad that I went last night, and I'm really looking forward to these two performances. It should be a good time. Yeah, so a little bit more Winnipeg for you with our new music festival. And now what you've also patiently been waiting for, some comic type talk. I just the other night finished the Flesh and Bones 4-part miniseries featuring Dalgota and loved it. Really, really loved it. It tied up the story nicely. I thought it was a great ending. Some of the ideas in it were really nice. It was some good sci-fi-ish, fantasy-ish comic business, you know. Very light. Very lightly I use the word sci-fi for sure, but I really enjoyed it quite a bit. And then another pleasant surprise was in the back of the story was this Bo Jeffries saga by Alan Moore and Steve Parkhouse, and that ran through the 4 issues as well. The first 2 parts of this Bo Jeffries saga pretty much blew me away. They were so great. I was thinking... It was so great that it was one of those stories that as I was sitting last night waiting for this performance to begin, it popped into my head again, and it sort of made sense in the setting that I was in and in the mindset I was in sitting waiting for this performance. I really liked it. I thought it was a great story. The last two parts were enjoyable. I don't think they were as good as the first two parts, but I still liked it overall. Yeah, I mean, the Dalgota series, which I can't remember how many issues that ran, is worth checking out. And if you can find these, I say go for it. I have doubles of 3 of these. I have 1, 2, and 4 in doubles. If anybody is interested in them, and you don't have them, please let me know. I'm more than happy to send out. Again, I don't have doubles of this issue, but I'm more than happy to send you out the 3 issues that I do have. So if anybody's interested, first come, first serve. Doesn't matter where you live. Let me know, and I can always send those to you for you to check out. And then I'm going through my color Nemesis. Number 1 is still downstairs, but I've read up to number 5, so I just have 6 and 7 to finish. And I mean, I don't want to talk about it too much because I pretty much have before. I wanted to talk a little bit about the colored versions, and I was impressed with the color versions. Let's just, as we're talking, go through the covers. O'Neill's art is equally impressive in color, and I wasn't sure that I would like it as much because there's something about the black and white images that he draws that I really liked. I liked the fact that in some of the panels you couldn't quite make heads or tails out of what was going on. I enjoyed that aspect of it, but I will say that it was also nice to look at a page, see the color, and see exactly who was talking, and see a little more of the shapes. But again, I mean, his characters are very abstract looking. It's some really, really good design elements in this comic, and like I said, it's very entertaining. So this is one, whether you see the black and white or whether you see this 7-issue Necro series from Eagle Comics, I've said it before and I'll say it again, don't hesitate to pick it up, and I swear this is the last time we'll talk about Nemesis. Another thing that I couldn't resist, I went back to the shop that had some price guides, and I got a hardcover copy of number 10 and a softcover copy of number 8, and these were $7 a piece. So for 14 bucks I got another 2 price guides, and I've been looking through them, and I'm still kind of going through them. I've started reading some of this one. I really want to read this piece on Bill Ward. Bill Ward did a lot of stuff throughout his career, but he eventually did move on to doing stuff for Cracked magazine, and this guy draws a very voluptuous woman. So it has kind of his life story in here, I think. Big Shot Comics recently had a video where he showed some Cracked magazines, and he had some Bill Ward stuff in there. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Yeah, so these are now a really welcome part of my collection. I'm really glad that I picked these up. They're very, very entertaining to read through. I mean, yes, the prices, oh my god, I can't believe that was 50 cents back then, and oh my god, yes, that's for sure, that's a part of it. But I'm finding that I'm loving looking through all the ads, seeing what people are offering, some art books that were coming out, advertisements for books. There was a I don't remember if it was in this particular one. There was an advertisement for, yeah, no, I don't think it was in this one, and I won't be able to find it. There was an advertisement for The First Kingdom, which if you've watched my videos, you know that I was reading and talked about with Damien. Yeah, it wasn't in that one. Yeah, great stuff. Really, really great stuff. While I was out, artist that I've always loved, Francis Bacon. This was at a Value Village for, I think it was $4.99. Nice fat book of talking about Francis Bacon's life, and this must have come out after the Love is the Devil movie had come out, which is also worth worth watching. I didn't realize Daniel Craig was in it. I haven't seen it since it came out. I've been a fan of this guy forever. His paintings have always blown me away. Let's see if we can find a little sample of his work in here. No, not in that section. Maybe back here. His figure study and his kind of abstract and horrific faces and hanging meats and all sorts of things have always really appealed to me. There's a portrait of Isabel Rawsthorne from 1966, Crucifixion from 1965, etc. There's a study of a baboon, study of portrait for Van Gogh, 3 studies of Crucifixion. Yeah, really great. So I'm looking forward to reading that. And finally, from the library, Street Poison. I heard an interview with the writer of this, Justin Gifford, on CBC, and it's a new book that's come out, and it's a biography of a guy by the name of Iceberg Slim. His infamous book called Pimp. Yeah, I mean, it made a name for him. It talks about his life as a pimp and his time in jail and as like a street hustler and that sort of thing. When he first put out the book Pimp, it was literally him handing it out to prostitutes and pimps on the street, going to drug recovery places and giving them a supply of the books. So when you were in rehab, you could read his book Pimp. And then later in his life, a lot of his books got turned into blaxploitation films. Pimp, most notably, kind of had what they did with Clockwork Orange at the back of Burgess's Clockwork Orange. They had a glossary of terms that he used as he made up his own lingo. Pimp was the same thing. It was real street lingo, but they had, in later versions of the book, a glossary of what the words meant at the back of the book. I still haven't been able to, not that I've looked really hard, I'm sure it's available all over the place. Pimp is one of them that I'd love to get. I'd never read it, and honestly, until I'd heard the CBC interview with Justin, I didn't know anything about Iceberg Slim, again, because I was never a big blaxploitation film fan, but I'm always really attracted to stuff that's a little more real, as far as if he's really using street jargon at the time and that sort of thing, and he was really part of this lifestyle. That kind of thing really appeals to me, which is why shows like The Wire really appeal to me. It's a little bit of that underbelly that I love. And again, I guess, you know, Sam Fuller, the same thing. I mean, if he was really on the streets and he was in the Bowery and he was spending time with junkies and prostitutes and criminals of all sorts, I like that sense of realism and that grittiness. So yeah, especially when it comes to writing. So Street Poison is worth looking into if you find it anywhere. I think it came out just last year. It was in the new and noted section at the library, which means I can only have it for a week. I got it more to kind of have a quick look through, because this is one that's on my list that I want to own for sure, but I just wanted to give it a quick perusal before I went and spent the money on it. But last night when I was having a little look through it, I think it's going to really appeal to me. So yeah, there you go, Street Poison. Oh, one last thing and then we'll call it a day. You may be asking yourself, Mr. comicKkrakK, what do you like to partake in while you're reading this high literature such as Nemesis and Street Poison and Francis Bacon? My brother-in-law went to Germany, to Berlin, and he's been there a few times. He goes to a convention there, and he always asks us if there's anything we need, if there's anything we want, and we always say no. And this time I said, screw it. I want a bottle of absinthe. I've been drinking absinthe and ordering it from overseas for, I don't know, past 10 or 12 years. And the reason I order it from overseas is even now the stuff that we do get in town isn't the real thing. The wormwood content isn't there. The thujone, which is a part of wormwood, isn't there. They're not the traditional recipes. There's one that recently appeared in the liquor stores that was kind of a cross between absinthe and brandy, and it's fucking horrible. So I've always ordered from overseas, and there's one that I like that's German in origin called Eichelberger, and it's a beautiful, beautiful absinthe. So I just gave him a few names. I found a couple of addresses for him in Berlin and said, here's some ideas. If you find it, that's great. If you don't, honestly, no big deal. I don't want a specific kind. If you find some, I'll take anything. And I said, I like the more traditional recipes. So he ended up getting me a French one when he went to a place. I haven't talked to him a lot about the place he went to. He said he couldn't take pictures inside, so they must also make absinthe there as well. And this is from a Le Mercier, a family, I guess, that's based on kind of the very, very traditional recipes. And this is really done without much bells and whistles. This is kind of stripped down to the bare bones. You're getting the bare bones taste of what absinthe would have been like, because a lot of the stuff that also was prepared back then and even now is really mixed with a lot of floral and herbs and stuff like that. Eichelberger, for example, had a really, really nice set of flavors in it and aromas when you added the water. So it's 72% alcohol. You distill it, you put it in a glass, and you mix in 2 to 5 parts of water, depending on your preference. You can add a sugar cube and drizzle the ice cold water over the sugar cube as well. You do not set it on fire. You do not do shots, because that's just stupid. And it's an amazing drink. So I've dipped into this. You can see I've put a small dent in this since I've got it. And I'm really, really glad to have it, and I think it's going to be something that I get him to pick me up every time he goes to Berlin, which is once a year. Yeah, that's it. Thanks very much for putting up with this little vlog, if you made it through to the whole way through. I don't know, I'm tempted to do something like the Damien Sleepy Reader does on his longer videos. If you've made it all the way to the end, type in the comments, ack, a dack, because his last one was a Flintstones reference as well too, so there you go. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon.